Well, good morning, everyone. This is our January meeting for the KC Digital Drive Health Innovation Team. We'll kind of kick off like we usually do with going around the table with introductions, and then we will have a couple of announcements and get into some exciting presentations for today. So, David, why don't you go ahead and start with for us?
Sure. My name is David Varan, and I'm an associate professor of family medicine at University Health, which formerly known as Truman Medical Centers, and I'm on the Lakewood campus. I supervise new resident physicians on Mondays, and the rest of the time do a lot of data analytics for the department and several of the clinics.
Great, thanks. Bob, our presenter.
Good morning, everyone. Bob Dudzinski. I'll be your second presenter today. Excited to be here, and I'll provide a little bit more background on myself as I go through the presentation. So looking forward to it.
Thanks. Kapil?
This is Kapil. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm with Batera Health. We do consulting in quality and safety with hospital systems.
Great, thanks. John Black.
Good morning. My name is John Black. I'm one of the other presenters this morning. I'm the founder and chief commercial officer for MediView, a company that is launching in Kansas City area with augmented reality technology.
Thanks, John. Welcome. Rich?
Rich Burry. I do some healthcare consulting in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm currently in Arizona. I work with several organizations that participate in the meeting and look forward to it.
Great, thanks, Rich. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron Deacon, Managing Director of KC Digital Drive.
Anurag?
Good morning. My name is Anurag Patel. I'm founder, CEO of Abada Health. We do security products for healthcare as well as data analytics. And I'm also with the healthcare team here at Digital Drive.
Great. Dennis?
Hey, morning, everyone. Dennis right now, our CEO at BioNexus KC, nonprofit here in Kansas City that supports the life science and healthcare research segments. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Doug?
I'm Doug O'Hulan. I'm an XR metaverse technology consultant, and I'll be speaking in a few minutes.
Great. Jenny?
Good morning. My name is Jenny Marshall, and I am currently the Director of Research for the Heart Center at Children's Mercy. And on Monday, I will be transitioning to a new role as the Director of Feasibility and Outcomes for Strategic Planning at Children's Mercy.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That'll be very exciting. Let me see here. Jim?
Jim Starsov. I'm the program manager for Solutions Lab at KC Digital Drive, and we've done a lot of work recently, which both Doug and John will talk about. We have a big AR/VR demo conclusion next week, so we're part of what helped bring MediView this morning.
Great. Scott?
Good morning. I'm Scott Gunnagle. I'm the commercial lead for MediView. I live here in Kansas City, and thus our focus here. Thank you.
Great. Robert?
Hi, I'm Robert Stiles with the Heartland Telehealth Resource Center. We're one of 12 telehealth resource centers funded by HRSA, Federal Department of Health and Human Services. And we serve the states of Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas. And it's a collaboration of Oklahoma State University, University of Missouri, and University of Kansas Medical Center.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Stan?
Stan Udovich, semi-retired faculty on KC and KU, and I've been doing some work with Heart to Heart.
Great. Liz?
Good morning. I'm Liz Cook. I am the telemedicine manager at Children's Mercy.
Thanks, Liz. Welcome. Let me see here. Ron?
Morning, Ron Whiting, Executive Director of the KC Health Collaborative. We work in the community on issues related to social drivers of health and health equity.
Great, thanks, Ron. Steve?
Hey, good morning. Steve Kropp, I'm the Director of Telehealth for the University of Kansas Health System.
Great, good to have you, Steve.
Thank you.
Todd.
Good morning, Todd Ing. On and on. We map 3D, create 3D maps of existing projects.
Great. William?
Hi, William Crumpler, works the Digital Inclusion Program Coordinator with KC Digital Drive.
William, were you having some trouble getting connected earlier?
My microphone did not work the first time, so
Okay.
I had to restart my computer, but all fine now.
Great, great. How did that work out? Have I missed anyone?
Yes, good morning, Teresa Gerard, calling in
Hey,
from
Teresa.
Florida, working on a national ACL, so the Administration for Community Living. It is a social care referrals technology innovation challenge. So we're trying to connect social services information with clinical information, administrative information. So good morning.
Morning, welcome. Adam, welcome. We're just doing some introductions. Would you like to say a word of hello?
Good morning, Adam Rakestraw, one of the co-founders of MediView, augmented reality company. Glad to be on the call.
Great, welcome. Okay, anybody else that I may have missed?
Hey, John, good morning. Larry Heffling, healthcare and IT consultant. I work with Rich Burry and several different organizations that have presented to the Digital Drive team.
Great, Larry, welcome. Okay, let us get kicked off. We'll have a couple of announcements and then get to our presentation. First, I'd like to introduce Doug Huhulan. Doug, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, so we're excited about the KC Digital Drive demo day next week, February 3rd. We've been working on this for the last over a year now, and focusing on how we can bring AR, VR to the heartland. T-Mobile is one of our major sponsors for that project. A lot of the focus is around healthcare. So at 4 o'clock, we'll have some networking and hands-on presentations. Or hands-on demos. So come in if you want to come early. There's an in-person event at the T-Mobile headquarters, the former Sprint headquarters, and then at 5 o'clock we'll have some presentations on XR medical procedures. The team I'm part of, which is the Animated Mannequins, the University of Kansas School of Nursing, and then virtual museum project as well. So we may also have some additional presenters. We will definitely, but also some additional teams looking at this. So looking forward, you can see the XR community and what things are happening in Kansas City area. Metro area around XR. I just wanted to highlight, maybe take a couple minutes, just our team, what we did is we looked at how can you animate medical technology and what does it mean to have mannequins. Right now you have physical mannequins that can cost anywhere from up to $200,000. For this education is clunky. It's expected that this simulation, medical simulation, will go from $2.5 billion to $8.2 billion. So what we want to do is have Kansas City leading edge of this technology. We're also working with University of Central Missouri along with KU School of Nursing, and the plan is that they'll be part of this project as well, or part of the demo as well, demonstrating some of the things they're doing. They actually have 21 students. They have grants to look at what this XR technology, the metaverse technology, and how to bring that to workforce development here in the Kansas City area. So just in closing, just wanted to highlight that right now XR technology is a little clunky. If you have a Quest, you really have to want it right now to make it work, in my opinion. But over the next 5 years, it will work just like your smartphone. And eventually you won't have a smartphone at all. You'll have smart glasses and you won't be looking down at your phone. You're looking out at the world. So look, if you're interested in understanding what the future is going to be in the next 2 to 5 years to 10 years in this great metaverse, come on February 3rd. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Doug.
Hey, John, could I just add to that real quick? This is one of our first in-person meetings. There will be proof of vaccination required. So if you do want to come out next Thursday, just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that, that they need to provide that.
Is a card good enough?
A card is good enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Doug, could you put the link to Eventbrite in the chat, please?
Yeah, I already did.
Okay, great.
And there at 5 o'clock, there will be a Zoom link. So if you can't go in person, just join it at the Zoom link.
Very good. Thank you very much. We're actually looking forward to that, very much so. Robert?
Sure, thanks for the opportunity. So, like I mentioned, there are 12 regional telehealth resource centers, but there's also a national telehealth resource center related to technology. We're all funded by the Office for Advancement of Telehealth. So they do, or they didn't for the last couple of years, but they're starting back up again, their technology showcase, which will be February 2nd and 3rd. And I'll put the link to sign up for that. It's totally free, but it'll be national leaders in the field of telehealth, including for Microsoft and a lot of national organizations. So just a lot of really great support. And one of the technologies that will be highlighted is a Kansas City-based one, Community Care Link, that many of you know about. We'll be talking about their use of technology to do e-health related social determinants work. So pretty excited to see them get a national stage, as well as to really hear some of the national presentations from across the country from some of the leaders in the field.
That's very exciting, Robert. Thanks for sharing that. And you have a link to share for that?
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat. And appreciate, you don't have to come to all the sessions, but you sign up, you'll get a link of kind of when the sessions and who's saying what, and if there's special ones you really want to sit in on. I would encourage everybody, Microsoft is trying, they may not be the leaders in the field, but I think there's some really interesting work out there, and it'll be nice to get an overview nationally of kind of what's going on with some of the leaders on telehealth technology.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Doug was speaking of the future, and the future is now with our current presentation from MediView, looking at XR type solutions within imaging. And I had the opportunity to see it live when the team was visiting here in Kansas City, and it is very exciting. So I'll turn it over to John Black, the co-founder of the team, and I'll let him introduce the rest of his team and let us hear about their solution. So John?
Well, on behalf of Scott and myself, thank you very much for your time this morning. We're excited to share a little bit about our company and why we think Kansas City and Kansas and Missouri in general are the ideal place to launch a technology like this. Scott puts it very clearly. These transformative technologies tend to start on either coast and trickle into the heartland. We're taking a different approach. We want these technologies to launch in the heartland and trickle outward. So we've got a great opportunity between MediView and the greater Kansas, Missouri area. So I'm going to share my screen. I do have some slides prepared this morning. Would one of you be so kind just to confirm when you can see my screen?
We're good, John.
Okay. So what you're seeing on your screen right now is what MediView is building. And essentially it's X-ray vision for the physician. And so in this setup, we have the anatomy is projected and registered accurately into the human body. So using augmented reality and new types of computing strategies that are coming out around spatial computing, this is not something that is years in the future. This product is expected to be submitted to the FDA for clearance by this fall. And I'll take a minute here just to explain a little bit about the company. So MediView was born from technology out of the Cleveland Clinic. Along the way, we've had the opportunity to partner with both Microsoft and GE Healthcare to take the startup speed and pair it with industry giants across the area and clinical leaders. And we've chosen Kansas City as the hub of where we're going to launch our initial technologies based on the way care is delivered. We love Cleveland Clinic. They're great. But how we deliver medicine is very different from inner city Cleveland to as we look across the greater Kansas area. And this is the problem we're trying to solve. So the picture of the physician here is something that occurs every single day in operating suites and interventional suites across the country. This physician is forced to look away from his patient, looking at black and white 2D images, and essentially trying to solve a 3D problem in 2 dimensions. With augmented reality, we can change that. Additionally, there's never been a way for them to collaborate freely and share their environment with other clinicians. And so this has the ability to impact how we deliver care in rural and underserved communities. The way we treat cancer today, I wanted to take a moment and just outline this. I know we've got some physicians on the call, but I never want to guess that people understand what ablation is. So ablation is a technique for killing cancer, and it's very challenging. So a clinician is forced to take a small needle and insert it accurately into the center of the cancer to deliver some type of therapy that will kill that cancer. And I've used the analogy, it's like trying to hit a grape inside a watermelon and doing it with one slice of paper view to hit that. And so it becomes very challenging, and it's a skill set that we shouldn't underappreciate, because clinicians that have mastered this really have put a lot of time and learning into this. So it's very common that once we get the needle in that tumor in that cancer, we can kill it with either heat or very, very deep cold. And the technology we're utilizing to solve this problem is augmented reality. So I understand a lot of people on this call may be familiar with augmented reality. We work with the Microsoft HoloLens, but I've heard it phrased as it is the ultimate situational awareness for the clinician. So you can pick and choose what information you want displayed in augmented reality, in addition to seeing the entire clinical environment as it naturally exists, just like looking through a pair of safety goggles. Our technology being offered comes in 3 forms. Our minimum viable product is launched today, and we are actively talking to clinicians in and around the Kansas City area to become amongst the very first adopters of this technology to start to pioneer new clinical pathways with augmented reality and telehealth. So our first technology is the XR30. Very straightforward, right? It takes this physical monitor that you're looking at, removes all the cords and hardware components, and allows a clinician to place it anywhere. We think this has some very early value for sonographers who face a high level of musculoskeletal injury, or somebody at the bedside who is used to positioning that ultrasound in a very specific way so that they can get the natural alignment of their senses in those clinical procedures. And this will quickly lead, and should lead within the next month or 2, to the 510(k) submission for our second version of the technology, which takes the ultrasound and actually projects it into the human body through the headset as if it was a flashlight, really helping the clinician understand the difference between anatomy they can feel or palpate and the ultrasound waveform that's being projected into the body. So we're also bringing a unique form of holographic guidance zone or flight path, so that a clinician can understand the orientation of the ultrasound beam and where they're inserting their needle for the millions of bedside procedures that are performed every day in the US. And then this culminates with our XR90. This is full holographic X-ray vision for the clinician. And like I said, this is expected to be submitted by early fall of this year. The beautiful thing about this technology is our very talented CTO and now CEO, Mina Fahim, has built this out to be a platform. So we're not targeting just one aspect of healthcare. We want to build a solution that can be built from where the image is acquired through your mid-level practitioners, ultimately to any medical specialty over time. And it's been a challenge with this technology. If you have not had an AR headset on, reducing it to written or spoken word is one of the most challenging things we can do. But if you have the opportunity to attend the AR VR event coming up, we will have some of our technology there for you to see. But a video will give a little bit of idea if you haven't had an AR headset on. But this is all projected in augmented reality, right? So the physician has the ability to place the screen wherever he wants, put it in that ideal clinician position where his hands, the imaging, and the patient all align, instead of turning our head all the way to the side and risking not having that alignment and, you know, potentially ergonomic injury. But this is the XR30 system in its native form. But this graduates in capabilities to what we call the XR90. And I want to show you a video of that right now. So this is a brief video, but this brings everything together. That flashlight mode, the needle guidance, and a pre-acquired CT. So we take the best of the preoperative imaging and align it accurately and scientifically with that patient's body. So if any of you have ever had a CT or an MRI, MediView can build a roadmap of your body and then make that roadmap actually line up with the road. And the way we do that is this unique form of image fusion. So this is looking through the headset and what you would see on a patient. Now, this is on a Phantom, but this is being done in human at the Cleveland Clinic, and we're actively seeking new research partners to make this multi-location. But you can see the ultrasound is projected like a flashlight. So a lot of people don't always realize that ultrasound is like a paper wide slice. So you can think of that volumetric CT as the entire loaf of bread, and the ultrasound is each individual slice. So things like localization of the cancer and finding it, as well as knowing the exact pathway to take to get to the optimal point to treat that cancer, but also not hit anything that is a critical structure along the way. So we really want to redefine how medicine is practiced. And we've never been able to until these augmented reality technologies have reached a point of maturity to get products out the door. And I can pause here for questions. This usually becomes a point where people are like, wow, that's really interesting. Or, I've got a few questions along the way.
Yeah, I want to, David Varan, why don't you go ahead with your question, please?
Well, sure. We in primary care often use portable devices like the Butterfly IQ, plug into our iPhones, and they can do single D or 2D projections. And so they help guide the needle into joints when we're doing joint injections or just looking at something. Wearing something would eliminate one of the biggest problems, because if you're in the room alone when you're doing this, I often have to have the patient hold the phone. And having something that you could wear and plug into these portable devices would be great. But it looks like what I'm seeing here is you need a prerequisite of a stereotactic 3D image done by a CT scan in order to make it work. But that's probably not where we need it most, where we're doing hundreds of these things a year or every day in the clinic.
David, thank you. That is a perfect example. So the initial version is exactly what you just described. So instead of having to fiddle with the screen, it really has a subset of capabilities to address all those individual needs. So instead of putting on, wheeling the ultrasound cart in, the ultimate embodiment is one of those handheld ultrasound probes that doesn't need a physical interface anymore. So everything would be displayed through your smart glasses. The imaging would be whatever size you want it to be. You wouldn't be limited to the size of your cell phone or your iPad. And so that was part of our overall strategy, was that feedback you just gave, is have something that has some less capability because it still has value to the clinician. So what you just described is available today. We're actively looking for initial customers in and around Kansas City.
So I have a question. How does that work? Because, Butterfly IQ has their own software. And so you're using it right there in the room to look, and it's got, all the ultrasound is on a chip. So you have, it's essentially like a probe, but it eliminates the need for a $20,000 ultrasound. At the same time, though, we don't get CT images or any other kind of additional information because this is all happening at the point of care. So would this be something that you would work with Butterfly IQ to then have another user interface, or would you be able to, I'm just curious as how do you envision that to work?
So right now we are integrated into the GE point of care ultrasound line through Vivid. So that was the first one. And GE has been a great partner because they've opened up their software to MediView to allow us to pull the data off in a very unique way. GE is a great partner. Big companies tend to be a little bit slower. So we were able to eliminate things like latency and really optimize that user interface. And so what you see does not need a pre-acquired CT. It can be used with or without it.
But it requires a GE device, right?
As of today, but we are rapidly integrating into a whole array of ultrasound suites, platforms, as well as probes, everything from linear, curvilinear, things like transesophageal probes for highly specialized use cases. So the idea is find that initial starting part, point, build a minimum viable product, and then put it in the hands of people like yourself, Dr. Voren, that can tell us what we got right and what we got wrong. So
where we're going though is replacing the stethoscope with these ultrasound probes. So a lot of us are carrying these around, right, in our pockets. We're not using a big cart. We're just using a mobile device. And those are the ones we really would like to figure out a way to plug in or feed.
Give us a little bit of time and we will be in your handheld ultrasound probe of choice.
Sounds interesting. Jenny, did you have a question?
Yes, great presentation. I was wondering about, you mentioned that, you're down to about 1 to 2 centimeter ablation size. Is there any thoughts on going to an even smaller, precise ablation size? Because, of course, I think in terms of children and infants, and ablations happen every day in this patient population. So, this is amazing technology, but right now, I mean, that you would hit multiple organs at this point, with that kind of size. So I was just wondering about future thoughts on that.
Jennifer, we are not limited to a specific range for ablation. So if you have an ablation modality of choice, right now we've been prototyping and actually displaying the theoretical ablation zone from whatever manufacturer you would use. So if you choose to use cryoablation, we would simply import that manufacturer specification. So we're not limited by any size as to what we can visualize. So you can think of, you get to use your normal instruments or imaging. We just bring all those inputs into the augmented reality space.
Hey, John, if I can jump in, I think the question, Jennifer, if you can, if I can paraphrase, you were more concerned with the size of the blast zone, so to speak. And I think what we were trying to describe is our ability to morph real-time soft tissue for accuracy of placement. Is that what your question was? Yeah, John, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, our accuracy is going to be completely in line with any current navigation system. So it goes back to your ablation size or whatever that manufacturer would build would be no more than the ablation side. Our job is to get the clinician there using the tools that they're used to. And so we look at this as a platform. The way the technology is built right now, we're focusing in the ablation of cancerous tumors, but understanding how to map and navigate the human body in augmented reality really is building a platform that can transition to other areas. So some areas of interest could be structural heart, electrophysiology. I have a passion for pediatric deformity correction, having worked there for 10 years. So things like breaking and rotating a young child's bone so that it lines up correctly. We don't have a lot of great tools. And these are exciting areas where MediView is looking for innovation partnership and the cross-pollination of ideas to really make augmented reality in healthcare. So our company has 3 very strong patents, 11 more en route, and we have continuing research agreements, but we're reaching that initial phase where we want to put our technology in the hands of the end user so that we can learn and listen intently on how to make these solutions not just cool technology, but something that is really valuable for the clinician. So Dr. Voren, your comment on, hey, put this in a handheld ultrasound, we listen intently to that and bring that feedback back to our engineers for them to solve problems. And Dr. Marshall, your comments about ablation zones, those are things where we're at a critical point where your feedback and your insight into care pathways is incredible for our technologists to then come back and build those solutions and do it very rapidly.
Hi, this is Teresa. A couple questions. I'm on the Board of Advocates for the University of Kansas Medical Center and for the School of Health Professions. And they have certificates in diagnostic ultrasound, cardiovascular sonography, nuclear medicine technology. Are you working at all with KU Med and their Zeal Clinic to get through, through things like the user experience and feedback from an emerging interprofessional environment?
Teresa, that is a group that we would love to connect with. If you have any way to bridge that, MediView really took the approach of we're going to build a minimum viable product and put it in the hands of the end user. So our commercialization and our early launch is taking place right now, where we are actively seeking those connections. And KC Digital Drive and the entire ecosystem has been very welcoming. So if you have any connections, we would love to reach out.
Yeah, so Teresa, I'll speak to that as well. So we had a meeting scheduled with John Rochelle from from KUMC side that got canceled due to the stress that the system's under with COVID. However, we've had a significant amount of clinical interest from various departments at the Med Center. So we are known there with a number of people that are familiar to our community that are very interested in working with us. We just need to figure out how to socialize it internally with the system.
Great, thanks.
Doug Hohulan, did you have a question?
Yeah, real quick question. So you're using the HoloLens 2 right now. Is that exclusive, or are you looking at any other XR devices or MR devices, I should say?
We intentionally built the system to be device agnostic. Right now, the HoloLens is a great platform. They are a great system to build on, and they offer a lot of advantages. However, there are great AR, VR companies that are emerging every day. We want to get to know them, whether it's Magic Leap or Lenovo or any of the early manufacturers that are in a proof of concept. So we're not exclusively bound to the headset for the Microsoft HoloLens 2, but right now it's been the device that we've been building on.
Okay, maybe next week, like we could talk about like New Vision.
Yes.
I don't know if you follow or if you talk to them at all, but they have some interesting devices, and T-Mobile has been working with them as well.
Yes, I would love to meet them.
Any other questions?
Hey, John, Dennis here. Oh, I just cut off Anurag, but sorry, Anurag. Real quick question, John, I don't think I heard you mention this, but I'd be curious, are you guys looking at the use of your devices in medical education? I'm just thinking about, the simulation lab over at KU Med. I know KCU has a new, education building, and I think, they're all kind of looking to integrate technology to provide a more realistic experience. Seems like this could be a pretty interesting way to do that.
Dennis, we focused on the area of actual physician training, right? So especially in the unique nature in which care has to be rendered in Kansas, a physician who has mastered his craft cannot always be in Lawrence, Kansas, working with a resident or fellow. So we've really focused in on being able to provide a meaningful bridge from the caregiver that is at the bedside to the expert, whether that's proctoring of residents or fellows, or whether it's just collaboration between interspecialty. So rather than the education portion, we've really honed in on how can you create a bridge during training and try to be very good at that. So we have some unique annotation tools, beaming that imaging back and forth. But there's great phantoms out there from CEA and otherwise. We're trying to offer a lower cost solution that can bridge at that patient care environment where there is somebody who needs care and an expert that is somebody remote.
Anurag, did you have something?
Yeah, this is for John and Scott. Scott, you mentioned something about like talking to individuals at KU. I think you said MC, but I think I don't know if you guys know the distinction. There's the health center, and then there's also the education, the university side. What Teresa and Dennis were talking about are on the university side. I think it would be very helpful to consider talking to the Zeal lab. But there's also, that's the medical center, sorry, the medical school. There's also a nursing school sim lab as well. Now you would think they would all talk to each other, but they don't, including the health system. So there might be multiple ways to like go into that health collaborative and triangulate getting in there. I do think that while you're saying training, it probably is synonymous with education. It doesn't have to be all the way down to the university student level, but it could be at the professional level as well. And they use those sim labs to do that.
let me see.
And I could see you hit on the lower cost alternative. I could see, that being something that kind of perks people's ears up.
Yeah, one of the things through our early use guidance when we were here in Kansas City, we had 2 ER docs from, and again, I apologize. I've lived here a long time. It's Truman to me. I can't remember what it's called. KU.
University Health.
University Health. Okay. So we had 2 ER docs there, and they were sharing with us the fact that with our minimally viable product platform, how exciting it is for interns, because the nursing staff and the residents have all done multiple venous sticks, but the interns that they get coming through the ER have no experience with it. So that was one use case in one subspecialty that they were excited about, back to your point, on a training purpose.
Yeah, and Anurag, if you can believe it. So we set out when we formed this company and decided that we wanted this to be the world's first truly interconnected medical device. And at the early phases, some venture capitalists were like, do you ever think this telemedicine thing will take off? And so we started building this way before COVID. So in a post-COVID world, having the ability to connect over distance or even in between spaces, right? Having a cardiologist that can go into the substerile environment and proctor somebody and see those images and see the physical environment that can be right outside one layer of separation from that infectious environment. As our caregivers, continue to combat this pandemic and, hearing about these breakthrough cases, we think we can put our thumb on the scale of some of these unique care environments with this solution. And it is really unique that we built with Microsoft.
I have to echo some of the comments here because medicine is the most visual discipline there is. And one of the reasons we have these really elaborate role-based things like radiologists is because the tools that allow a person to visualize them are very, very, very expensive and are difficult to interpret. For example, ultrasounds and single plane ultrasounds. But if you could use a tool that's relatively inexpensive and 3D visualize something with software that you're guiding an ultrasound probe in, it makes a whole world of difference. And I'll tell you a really cool little example is these little ultrasounds that are very inexpensive, they cost around $1,000, are able to do a 3D image of a bladder. So we can do the bladder scans and you just pass the image over that and then you hit the bladder scan and it automatically renders so you can calculate the volume of this, which we use all the time in little pediatric visits and people that are having some incontinence problems and stuff like that don't require a specialist to be able to interpret that. The minute you see a 3D image, you can answer a patient's questions. So having the ability to see things in 3D at the point of care, broadly disseminated, really is extremely valuable.
There is some good research coming out of University of West Virginia from Dr. Jonathan Sherman, who's using AR/VR for neurosurgical planning. And his research shows that when he can visualize that case in 3D, his plan actually changes 33% of the time. So to me, that was mind blowing. But Dr. Voren, some of the other things that we've done is, just taking that patient and rendering it in 3D for informed consent, right? So if you have somebody seeing is believing, and when you can throw their body up and say, hey, this is what we're facing, this is what I have to do. There's some physicians who have some strong opinions that we can improve things as simple as informed consent by either showing their specific disease state or showing something similar to it in that three-dimensional world.
That's a very interesting application of it. That's great. Any other questions? This has been really very exciting to hear.
Thank you, John.
Hey, John, we would be remiss to share with the group that we are a startup company open for funding. If you or those are interested as we move down the road, there'll be another round opening in February, and we will have people contact those interested in investing in this technology.
Good to know. I'll start looking at it, gathering my pennies. Great.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate the view. It's not, we, as Doug has indicated, this has been an area of particular interest for Casey Digital Drive. Jim Starcev, who's chimed in, has helped really organize us around topics of AR and VR, XR, so on. And so it's really spot on right now for the stuff that's of interest to us. So thank you very much. A few folks have joined us since we started off here. So I hate to put anybody on the spot, but if we could just do a couple of quick introductions, just to say hello and give your name, that'd be great. And I'm looking at Daniel. Could you say hello, please?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Daniel Kennedy. I'm the new vice president for BioNexus KC. Really fun presentations and talk, guys. I've really enjoyed this.
Great. Thank you. Ashley?
Hey, I'm Ashley Smith. I'm a clinical informatics nurse at North Kansas City Hospital. So interesting topics of conversation today. Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you. And Molly?
Good morning. Sorry, I joined a little bit late. I was having some technical difficulties. Haha. I am the new program director with the Heartland Telehealth Resource Center with KUMC, and I'm working with Robert Stiles.
Oh, great. Welcome. Glad to see you in that role.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I guess, did we gain anybody else that I missed? Okay, let us move along then to a topic that is kind of near and dear to my heart, and that is the way that we engage people within the healthcare encounter and beyond, over distance and over time. And so that's leads us to a presentation from Bob Dudzinski and his organization to look at exactly how we can have conversations in a digital world. So digital conversation with Bob Dudzinski.
Great, thanks, John. Appreciate it. I'm going to start sharing my screen here in just a moment. John and Scott, absolutely fascinating technology. And again, good morning to the KC Digital Drive people. And John, if you can confirm that you can see my screen?
We're good.
Perfect. And again, before I begin, I just want to let everybody know that I've been wearing my red tennis shoes all week in homage to the Kansas City football team. And I don't plan on taking them off until a victory this weekend. So super fun game. To that end, the agenda for today is as follows. I'm going to provide you a little bit of background about myself and certainly the genesis of digital conversation. We'll look at the life of a user on the digital conversation platform. And that user may be a clinician, a nurse, a pharmacist, physician. It may be administrative personnel, such as a scheduler. It may be an agent in a call center. We will look at our analytical platform charts. I'll review 3 case studies of the application of digital conversation. I'll talk a little bit about the trends that we're seeing in digital messaging, both from a patient's perspective, from a carrier's perspective, from an organization's perspective, and then certainly Q&A at the end. So a little bit about myself to kind of set the stage and context for digital conversation. My background, I'm a pharmacist, received my doctorate from the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I've owned, operated, and sold several entities, a claims processing company, a prescription benefit management, a mail order company, and a payment integrity company. The last company, the payment integrity company, was actually acquired by a publicly traded communications company. After acquisition, I was asked to build and lead a healthcare practice. And the purpose of the practice was really to assemble these assets in the communication space and then beep up across the country talking to CEOs, CMOs, CNOs, CTOs about the importance of communication in healthcare. And that was right before the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. Subsequently, the company got bought, disassembled and sold. I took several of the engineers with me and started Digital Conversation. In that journey, though, what was evident through my conversations was two important edicts for our company. Number one, the underutilization of digital messaging within the healthcare space at that time, and then the incredible amount of utility that digital messaging has and offers healthcare. So with that, we formed Digital Conversation. And really today, what we are is an organization comprised of healthcare professionals, technology experts. Really, we're dedicated to helping organizations drive revenue, reduce clinical administrative burdens, focusing on outcomes, enhancing the patient's journey, and really applying proven and secure digital communication strategies. So what exactly is Digital Conversation? Well, we are a secure HIPAA-based, HIPAA-compliant, cloud-based platform, really built to provide a digital ecosystem for an organization. We do this with products that are meant to preserve investments that organizations have in their current applications. We enhance the utility of existing applications. We improve workflows. We may actually add a workflow to an organization. All this hopefully resulting in improved profitable revenue, helping them lower their operating and communication costs, and certainly facilitating a successful patient journey and an enhanced experience on behalf of that patient. So we have a base utility layer called Digital Messenger. And upon that utility layer, we build and deploy our products. And our products really fall into the following domains. Custom solutions, where we'll go into an organization and identify things that they may need from a messaging perspective. We have administrative solutions. So upon the platform, we do things like secure messaging, secure video, a relatively new product called Secure RX, which we'll demonstrate today, secure order, chat functions, campaign functions. We also offer a B2B enterprise feature, hence that if there are two clients of ours that have a relationship, the two instances of DC then can communicate collectively to improve the relationship between the two organizations. We do forms and signatures. We do secure payments, co-pays, a great deal of surveying. For those organizations that needed augmenting scheduling, we have our own scheduler. Particularly during the early stages of the pandemic, we were helping organizations stand up very complicated scheduling systems in order for patients to receive vaccinations. We certainly do appointment reminders and appointment recalls. Recalls defined as the ability to consume a data file from an organization and then reach out on behalf of that organization to bring people in for maybe an annual wellness visit or a colonoscopy or a mammographer. So, and then we also have a unique product called DC Pathways. That'll also be a product that we'll look at today when we actually go through the demonstration. So our take on the patient journey. You've all heard it. It starts at the proverbial front door. And let me kind of define how we see that. We have clients today that, particularly those that are provisioning care, where patients are actually texting in requests for appointments. So in other words, a patient will text in to an organization asking, is Dr. Smith available in January and what times? Schedulers will respond via that channel, and then where applicable, begin to launch various intake documents, whether that be for medical history or consent. The patient comes in, care is provisioned, maybe at that time, walking out the door, a survey is sent as a precursor to CAPS, or maybe a need to improve a Google review. But once that individual, that patient, that customer, that consumer is outside those four walls, digital communication still continues. So whether it's from care coordination activity, whether it's from some team approach where pharmacist is teamed with a physician, additional messaging can occur, whether it's texting, secure messaging, secure video, our pathway product to improve adherence or compliance under a given protocol, or whether it's reminding patients through our Secure RX through our Secure RX product that their medications are due for refill, collecting payments, and certainly recalling them back into the office in and of itself. So the way we look at the journey is that messaging and digital communication occurs at the beginning and throughout the journey of the patient. So the three products that we'll look at today: forms and signatures. What we do is we take a client's existing forms, we digitize it, we create a link, and we push it out where applicable, either at the user level or from a campaign out to the population. And those forms can take on a variety of different identities, whether it's screening, assignment of benefits, HIPAA release forms, COVID assessments. And if an organization doesn't have a form, then we'll create that form on their behalf. And we'll look at that today as well. Every one of our products, we kind of have areas of focus. So with respect to forms and signatures, this creates a great deal of operational efficiency for the organization. And certainly it provides significant benefit to the patient, as a lot of these forms or paperwork can be taken care of prior to the actual visit. This is a relatively new product of ours. We call this Secure RX. And the genesis of this was primarily where pharmacies were not very successful in reminding patients that their refills are due. So this particular product is a fast and convenient way and a secure way for patients to understand when their prescriptions need to be refilled. So basically how this product works is we consume data from the pharmacy. It's sent to our platform. It's loaded into our database. Basically, we run a business process against that data. A link is sent out to each patient, the patient where the refills are due. The patient then clicks on the link and authenticates in one of three ways: simple birth date, two-step authentication where a code is sent, or maybe even actually a PIN. Once that patient authenticates, they're presented with a more detailed version of what prescriptions are due to be refilled. And it also provides them the ability then to look at some of the details behind each prescription. So once the patient selects these refills and submits, then we receive that submission, and then we present that data back to the pharmacy application, which in turn processes the prescriptions. Patient gets a confirmation, and in essence, the process is complete. In this instance, then, for this particular application, no mobile app, no username, no password. We feel that it has a great deal of impact on medication adherence, efficiency, reduces inbound and outbound phone calls, and it is a unique way and a convenient way for the patient to refill their medications. Now, we do variations of this. We do secure order. So any transaction where there needs to be an approval or an order or a confirmation, we provide this. We have a large diabetic supply company that is using this for order confirmation for CGMs. So in other words, a CGM is ordered, they send out a message to the patient to confirm, and then once that order is confirmed, it's processed, and then they also use it as a way to refill on supplies for that particular, for those particular services. And again, the benefits are the same. And we'll take a look at each of these. And then we'll also look at pathways. Pathways is a way for a user to message and author these messages to a disease state or a clinical condition, calendar them, and then prescribe this pathway to the patient. So as an example, we have again, an organization in the diabetic space where they're using this as an adjunct to educating a newly diagnosed diabetic. So in other words, the diabetic goes through an intense educational process, but then it's followed up with a pathway. And what happens then is those educational principles that were delivered are reinforced over 18 messages over a 12-week period of time. So again, a pathway can be used from an educational perspective to facilitate medication adherence around complex specialty drugs. It can be used in the behavioral health space, tobacco cessation, dietary reminder, weight management. So there's a variety of uses that our organizations, our clients are using and delivering on with pathways. So we're going to step into the actual application now. So the platform is role-based. So logging in as a specific type of user provides certain levels of privileges, functionalities, and features. So in this demonstration, we're going to log in as a manager per se. So the way the platform is constructed, it's multi-tenant. We have clients that have multiple organizations, and when inside those organizations, there are multiple subscribers. And subscribers by us is defined as that part of the organization where an actual number is associated with, whether it be a short code number, a long code number, an 800 number, any number that can be text from or digital messaging can occur on. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and select a specific subscriber. And when the user logs in, this opening dashboard is customizable. So whatever the user, whatever the organization wants to see at the user level, we provide that information. Up in the right-hand corner here, you'll see that the user understands what organization or what subscriber that they're logging into, the primary number that the outgoing messages may go on, and then the ability to understand and manage some of the nuances associated with this particular user. So in other words, we have subscribers that have multiple numbers that they utilize. Why would they do that? With inside of an organization, they may have a number that they want to send a message out that's dedicated to the clinical staff. They may have a number that they want to dedicate to the marketing staff. But all of those are organized underneath an organization and underneath a subscriber, and a user has the opportunity to move in between those numbers if they choose to do that. On the left-hand side, this is the opening menu that all users see. Interactions we'll look at here in just a minute. This is the area that the user will spend 95 to 99% of their time. Enterprise is a feature that we built to connect two instances of digital conversation. Again, I talk about the fact that if there's a company, if our clients are doing business with each other and they want to communicate directly over secure channel, we built enterprise messaging to do that. So it's secure and they can pass documents and information back and forth. You can have multiple partners with inside enterprise messaging, and you can also organize by departments or individuals or physicians such that messages can be effectively routed to the appropriate user on the platform in and of itself. A library, we'll look at this in a little bit more detail later, but this is where pathways are created and housed as users build these pathways and deploy them against their population. Data, we do a lot of work around campaigns where we're receiving files or we're integrating into various platforms by which to pull and extract data in order to send messaging out to a specific cohort. So here we give the user and the organization visibility into that type of data exchange and processing of data as we receive it from our clients. Secure RX, secure orders. Again, this is a relatively new product where these transactions now exist on our platform. As we consume them, we provide visibility into it at the user level. And as the transaction progresses, the status progresses on the transaction as well. In other words, if I use the Secure RX as an example, as we consume the data from the pharmacy, it's housed on our platform. It goes through a series of dispositions. As it's ultimately submitted and requested, then those statuses change here, and the user has visibility into what's happening with those actual transactions. We provide a level of self-administration on the platform. They can add their own new users. They can add and change welcoming messages or timing of messages and so forth. So depending on the role of the user, there's a lot of administrative features that we put back in the hands of the user in and of itself. So I'm going to head now to the interactions page. And again, this is where a user typically spends the vast majority of their time. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send a message to the platform. And so what happens here is when a user enters this feature, they have the opportunity to query their database on name, mobile number, or employee ID. And employee ID for us is very important because what we're doing is we're holding a multitude of different types of IDs based on the applications or databases that our clients run. So in other words, if a organization has both a pharmacy system and an EHR, and we need to tie those records into our database, we allow the ability to hold multiple IDs inside the patient file. We have a system called tags. And what a tag is, it's an attribute that we actually assign to the patient and we assign to the user. These attributes or these tags are used for a variety of different purposes. In the context of workforce management, what happens then is when we apply that attribute or a tag to a patient and our users have those same tags, we actually can route incoming messages to that user's desktop. So what that allows us to do is, particularly in our call center space, where we have organizations that really want to kind of flip the dynamics of a channel, where they want to go from 70% voice to 70% digital messaging, but they have a large workforce, we have the opportunity then to parse out those incoming messages and move it and help manage that messaging back to the patients off of a single number. The tags are also used to provide segmentation within the population as well. So in other words, you can create tags to identify your diabetic patients or any other patient that you want to segment on the platform in and of itself. The segmentation or the tags are also used on campaigns. We have an organization that has been doing a lot of work in the COVID therapy area, and they're doing a recent survey on ivermectin. And they wanted to understand all the patients within the database that got the ivermectin survey. So again, multiple uses for tags as an attribute, both from the patient's perspective, from the user perspective, and from a campaign perspective. So what we're looking at now here is I had actually sent in a message to the platform, and what happens then is as those messages come in, like they do on your cell phone, they receive tags. So what this is actually telling me is that this particular patient, I have a message that has come in from this particular patient. One message, the tag is blue. as the day goes on and that message isn't responded to, that badge ages and it changes color. So as we look at this patient's card, what we're looking at here, this green basically tells me that the patient is successfully enrolled on the platform. This gives me an idea as to what type of enrollee this is. It's a customer, patient. This gives me a view of all of the available IDs that exist with this patient. This gives me an understanding of who was the last user or who was the last one to send a message to this particular patient or enrollee. In this instance, this patient has a proxy or a caregiver. We display the name, birth date, here are the tags, the attribute up here that we talked about, and then certainly the last message that came in from this particular patient. If I click on the patient, then I actually get the interaction stream. And what we do here is this recognizes future interactions. And I had talked about pathway earlier. And what a pathway again is the ability to construct messages, calendar them, and then prescribe them to the patient. So what this is telling me is that today at 1:17, this enrollee or patient will receive this message. Now, as a user, I can edit this message, or I can actually change the date and time of this message if it needs to be sent at a more convenient time. And again, you'll see that there's a series of messages that will go out over the next month for this particular patient. And each one of these messages is editable both by content, date, and time. You have the ability to add a future interaction. Contrasting between pathway. Pathway is something that you build, you hold in your library, you prescribe to a patient. Add a future interaction is one that can add at the point of dealing with this patient right now. So in other words, if I want to send a message, if I want to schedule a message specifically for this patient tomorrow at 4 p.m., and I might do that because I want a quick follow-up on our conversation, then I would schedule that message here and now. Again, date, time, and the actual message. We hold notes on the patient, which again, are date and time stamped. We have a feature called video on demand, secure video on demand. By exercising this, I can actually send a link to the patient. A token is generated. It is authenticated to the channel. And basically, I can start a video presentation on demand. Same thing occurs with secure messaging. So if I want to move off the carrier channel and move into a secure messaging, I use this particular feature where, again, I'll send a link to the patient with a generated token, authentication occurs, and then now we're in a secure channel having a conversation between the user and the patient. Once the session is closed, then 100% of the conversation sits on the digital conversation side and nothing is left residual on the patient's phone. There's variations of this secure messaging that we've built, particularly because of COVID. We have a lot of our organizations that are doing a tremendous amount of testing. And so how they use this secure messaging feature is patient comes in, they test, the results come back, the user crafts a message, says the test may be positive or negative, attaches the associated document, launches it. It comes to the patient as a link, the patient authenticates, receives the confirmation and any associated documentation with it as well. So again, we have a quasi-synchronous way to do secure messaging and then certainly an asynchronous way to do messaging. So what I'm going to do now is show you a couple of these products. I want to take a look at SecureRx. So what I'm going to do is simulate, in essence, a message coming to a patient around refills that are due. So I'm going to actually send this to my phone, and you'll see what the actual patient sees. I'll bring my phone up here. So what the patient sees, and there can be a preamble to this link, but basically it may say something to the effect that, John, Bob, your prescriptions are due to be refilled. Please select this link and choose, or some variation thereof. When the patient does that, then we go through an authentication process. And for this demo, I'm just going to use a birth date. Actually, I chose the order one. In this case, then they can choose which of these products they'd like to see or reorder, and then submit. And basically then that information then is transmitted back to the platform of digital conversation, which in turn is fed back to the application that our organization is running. Forms and signatures. We'll look at that as well. This actual form was developed for an organization that is medical device company. They do a lot of CPAP and BiPAP distribution. There's a level of complexity that exists in the DME space where there's a multitude of forms that need to be exchanged. So again, taking a look at this, as the form comes in, in this instance, they collected a lot of information from the patient, all the way to consent forms, to signatures, notice of insurance guidelines, acknowledgement of consent, emergency contact information, education plan of care, assignment of benefits, and finally, the patient then ends up submitting that information back. And what we do is we house that data, we send that data automatically to the organization, either as a secured PDF, password protected, or as raw data, depending on what the information of the form is used for. I want to take a look at now how pathways are built and delivered. So on our database, we hold a lot of information about the patient or the enrollee: name, mobile number, birth date, customer type. This is where the attributes are applied, or the tags are applied to the patient. We offered the ability to add a proxy to the patient, and this came from a need where understanding who has responsibility for the patient and how to effectively communicate with a caregiver or a proxy for that patient. And here is where we add our conversation pathways to a patient. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to flip over to our pathway. So again, what pathways are is the ability to construct a series of message and place them on a calendar and then prescribe them to the patient. So in this instance, what you're looking at is a diabetic education pathway where we've taken the ADA guidelines and then basically reinforced those on behalf of the patient over a period of time. All of these messages can be edited, timing can be changed, and ultimately it becomes permanent inside of your library. And as you can imagine, there is a host of applications to this, again, whether it's education, persistence, compliance, medication adherence, or maybe something as simple as creating a pathway that asks a patient to do a survey, a one message pathway. So again, we have clients that are utilizing this in a variety of different ways.
Bob, we want to make sure that we have some time for questions for you as well. So if you have a kind of a concluding point that you'd like to make, we'd love to hear it.
Got it. So I'm going to move on. And I guess I just want to kind of round this out with a couple of case studies to kind of give you some ideas to, some of the actual applications of digital conversation. We have an ACO with about 55,000 Medicare recipients. They're organized with 35 physicians, 25 nurses, and 5 pharmacists. And really, when we engaged this organization, we had a strategy that we put together around 5 key areas: consent management, delivery methodologies, how they would handle responses, what they would put in those actual messages or content management, and certainly the ability to ingest data, analyze, and notify. And really, the objectives of this were to create a direct dependency on revenue generation, help lower their communication costs, and really improve their provider and patient satisfaction. So with this particular ACO, our first product that we delivered was around an adherence for Shingrix. This particular organization had an 83% compliance rate for Shingrix, Shingrix being the vaccination for shingles, and really 2-dose application. So what we did is as the patient got the first dose, we consumed the data, and then we set up a pathway by which we requested any challenges that they may have had with the shot in the first 3 days. We reminded them on the 30th day, and certainly reminded them on the 60th day the need to get that second shot. We took their compliance rate from 83% to about 97%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in terms of revenue, that put about $1.2 million back on the top line for the actual organization. And then from that point, then there was a series of other activities that we proceeded to do, really looking at all of the workflows inside of the organization. So we started to do outreach campaigns around identifying patients who may be a candidate for a statin, certainly flu shot reminders. We started to set up secure messaging and secure video for their nurse call center. We built conversation pathways around their specialty med department. And we certainly helped them through the challenges with COVID, bypassing their EHR scheduling system and standing up a new one in order to do a better job around managing their employee population against the patient population. Small chain pharmacy. They have a pharmacy department, specialty pharmacy, respiratory therapy, DME, and COVID testing. I talked a little bit about their COVID testing, how they use our enhanced secure messaging piece, where they're actually crafting a message, sending it out on the results of a COVID testing. And that's been very successful, and it actually allowed them to be very proficient in their ability to deliver on that. And then there's a diabetic supply company that has call centers both here in the States and in the Philippines. And they were the ones that wanted to move from a 70% voice volume to a 70% digital messaging volume. And we were able to achieve that a lot around our ability to manage their workflow from our tagging system, allowing messages and to be routed to proper users in order to create that level of success with their population. And then finally, I just want to share a little bit about what we're seeing today in the marketplace. We're seeing probably more patient-initiated proactive texting than ever before. And what I mean by that is there's an expectation out there of the patient that they would like to connect with their organization and be proactive in that. In other words, I kind of gave an example of that on the digital front door, where patients now are requesting services from our clients via the text channel in a proactive manner. So we're seeing a lot more of that, where historically it's always been the organization initiating the outreach for a given patient. Some of you maybe have or will start to experience some of the challenges around texting as an informational service as defined by the FCC. So if you're not aware of this, through a piece of legislation, basically they defined texting as an informational service, which in turn gave the carriers the ability to block and control content of texting. Unlike telco services, where the carriers really don't have control, nor can they block a phone call. And so what we're seeing today is carriers exercising that in the marketplace, where sometimes content or messages can literally be blocked by a carrier. And now there's ways to mitigate this, but it warrants certainly a look-see as your organization continues to expand its digital messaging or texting capabilities. We're seeing an increase in volume of digital messaging. A lot has to do around staff shortage. In other words, how does an organization continue to engage their population when there's a staff shortage? Well, digital messaging allows them to engage at scale and capacity. And then certainly the other trend that we're seeing is social isolation during COVID. And we're seeing our clients kind of shift in how they're engaging their patients, not just from the rote provisioning of care, but also from understanding where they are emotionally and psychologically. So we're seeing a lot of that happening in the marketplace as well. So I'll close with that. I know we're rapidly running out of time, and be happy to answer questions.
Thanks very much. That was very thorough and appreciated the coverage, Bob. I think I've turned first to Dr. Varan and see what his thoughts were. He had texted or typed a long message in the chat.
Well, my first thought was we're already interacting with patients in our own EHRs, and I'm trying to figure out what would motivate me to jump out and look at another messaging system, unless this acts in the background and my user interface doesn't change. So I can't tell whether I'm dealing with something that's going out as a message to a patient or not. But more importantly, as we move to alternative payment systems, the amount of time that we're actually spending messaging patients can contribute to chronic disease management billing. So all that needs to be able to be extracted in one place and then passed on to the billing so that we can place those codes and the amount of time, no matter who it is. That's one thought that I was having. I was just having a difficult time dealing with the fact that I don't think many of our clinicians would want to move away from a system they're already overwhelmed and spending too much time in to do something else.
Sure. Let me respond to a couple of those thoughts, Dr. Varan. Yes, that's an observation that we see regularly. And I think the answer to that would be, the limiting factors of what's actually happening inside the EHR from a communication perspective. Yes, EHRs have the ability to text, but I think those messages tend to be unidirectional. They tend to be without substance. However, it does require the use of an alternate application. And so it gets back to one of our previous points that, there's not an expectation of us, obviously replacing your EHR, but the need to communicate with a patient in a across the organization, not just as a doctor, but as a nurse and as a pharmacist possibly, and the aggregation of that communication under a single platform, where we can also add additional utilities to facilitate the success of whatever also is coming out of that EHR, maybe the capturing of a conversation. So a lot of organizations weigh that associated value between how they want to communicate with the patient and do they want to really do it out of a system that really wasn't built to interact at that level with the patient. And we're finding that out with a lot of applications. EHRs are great at patient information. They're not great at communicating. And so what we also then obviously try to add is this notion that if we had everybody on the platform, the visibility of the totality of the interaction also is visible to all the users when they're on top of the actual platform in and of itself. So fair point. But again, I think it's a matter of weighing, what do you want to achieve when you're communicating with the patient? And then to kind of piggyback on and segue into that, remote patient management, obviously, a lot of organizations are foraying into that. Well, we see digital conversation as a way to augment remote patient managing in the context of maximizing billing for those types of services. Matter of fact, we just wrote a blog on this, and I'll share that with the group a little bit later, but how marrying remote patient management with digital conversation can actually improve billable events for an organization. So that's how we're thinking about it. And there is some technology that we've kind of adapted to on the desktop as well. We know that users have a multitude of applications oftentimes opened up on their desktop or on their desktop. But we're also integrating into the browser's notification system. So if there is an incoming message, you can be alerted, just like you're alerted from Amazon, that you have an incoming message from a patient. I think the other interesting phenomena that we're seeing is when we do have physicians on the platform, on-demand secure video has been an interesting opportunity as well, where maybe texting has transitioned into a phone call, but now it needs to transition into a secure video conversation or chat. And the ability to do that quickly and efficiently, without sending an invite or going through a Zoom, also seems to be gaining traction on top of the platform as well.
You do realize that most physicians already use Doximity to do that.
I do.
I mean, in my clinic alone, out of the 100 and some odd residents and physicians, I think all but 2 or 3 of them have been using Doximity for years, ever since mobile phones, to use that as a communication tool and flip seamlessly between video and phone calls. So what the patient is getting is the organization or the clinic's information rather than their personal phones. So how would you pull a physician away from a platform that they're using to do exactly the same thing? Where's the advantage?
Yeah, I think it goes like this.
Free. I mean, that platform costs the physician nothing.
Yeah. I think it goes like this. If you look at the totality of care that's trying to be delivered against the patient, certainly there's the convenience that the physician has with that particular application. But I think the answer then becomes is, what about all the other clinicians associated with that patient? How do we bring aggregated communication organized to that patient such that the team collectively has an understanding as to what those interactions are with that particular patient? So as an example,
but isn't that the function of the chart? And to have the chart scattered everywhere becomes problematic. I mean, we're seeing this right now with interoperability in our EHR, where we're getting feeds from KU, from St. Luke's, from North Kansas City, from Advent Health, everywhere except HCA is coming in. And we're seeing all that stuff in one place with the patient. I would hope that.
So let me ask you this
a
question.
Seamless addition
Sure.
to that. So transactions that would occur in your platform would also appear on the Commonwealth interface that we're using.
Yeah, so I would ask you this. I think the question is this then, is in your setting, do your nurses engage with digital communications with their patients today? Do they text?
Yeah, absolutely. They do that on multiple levels, but they usually do it from within the chart.
Yes.
So and then they're not too concerned about the modality because backend will handle that. But the thread of communication is visible to everybody that opens up that patient's chart.
Yeah, and I think that the difference then is, at least in the settings that we're in, because you've described, where the ACO started from, and what they came away with was for them to play in the chart, to have a robust communication wasn't happening. And so what we did then is they moved outside of the EHR and they brought the entire organization on top of our platform, including pharmacists, including physicians, including nurses. Now that was their choice because again, they felt that there was inadequacies in how those messages
only
was
for their ACO patients, or was that for all patients?
It was actually it was for the entirety of their 55,000 Medicare recipients.
Well, that's Medicare, but
yeah.
Medicare is 30% of any organizations. What about the other 60% of patients? Or
Well,
do they have two different streams for whether you're a Medicare beneficiary or you're a Medicaid or whether you're a third party?
Well, I would say that 80% of their population was Medicare recipients. 20% was the general public, but the general public got rolled up into the platform as well. So they went across the board with all of their patients. And I think where the difference is yes, from a texting perspective, they could do that and they could see that in the chart. But then as they migrated into other utilities of the platform, such as secure messaging, secure video, recapturing of forms, all of that became visible in the interaction stream that are sometimes not functions of the EHR. And so from that perspective, it made sense for them to move out of the chart, out of the EHR, onto the DC platform. And if you look at other organizations where they're maybe not necessarily provision of care, but they're providing services, and they are operating, large call centers, the ability to leverage that channel at scale and capacity, not necessarily being tied to an EHR, then it became very valuable to organizations like that as well. So I guess the way we look at this is we understand that there are current processes that organizations are going through today, clinicians are going through today. Our job is to look inside of that organization and determine where the application of digital conversation makes the most sense. Now, maybe in your particular case, it doesn't, and that's okay. But as we look at other organizations where they're trying to solve a given workflow process, or maybe they're trying to create a boost in revenue, or maybe lower communication costs, that's where we play. The richer, the deeper, the more complex the organization is what we want to talk to and work with. So again, we may not be for everybody, but how we approach this is digital messaging, certainly from our perspective, is underutilized in the marketplace. And I do think that the utility associated with digital messaging, when deployed correctly, has significant advantages for organizations. So that's how I would look at it.
I think it seems important to me that you think of it in a very strategic sense. And I think that's the approach that you're taking, Bob. We've run over here, and I'm okay to hang on myself to facilitate any further questions, but I realize that people do need to go. And I want to thank everyone for their attention and input today, particularly to our presenters for making this really a worthwhile engagement and something that we all look forward to each month. So thank you all. I'll hang on here just for the purpose of facilitating a few more questions, but I realize some may need to go. So thank you all. Ashley, are you still with us? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering on the messages. So I guess my concern would be getting that patient to engage, to ensure, especially when you're talking about these pathways. So does the pathway require the patient to respond to something, or can we see, like as an organization, can we see when that patient accessed or if that patient accessed a message?
Absolutely. So really the creation of a pathway is really can be a function of your own intellectual property. So, and what I mean by that, Ashley, is if you build a pathway and within that messaging you ask a question or you're asking for a response, then the visibility of that response exists in the interaction screen or stream that I demonstrated earlier. So in other words, as the messages go out under a pathway, they are placed in the interaction screen. And if that message then requires a response from the patient, you will see that response from the patient. Not only will you see it in the stream, but you'll see it in the interactions page where there is an incoming message, just like you see on your own phone when you have a badge that says that there is a text message that has come in. So that's the purpose. You can build a pathway to your own intellectual property, prescribe it to a patient. That pathway can be used for encouragement, for education, for requesting information, and then you have visibility into the response of the patient. It can effectively then respond back, and that does happen because if you delve deeper into the diabetic education pathway, there's a lot of encouragement that existed in those messages, and there was also places within that pathway where there was asking for a response. How are you feeling today? Do you feel you're under control? There are pathways that have been built to acquire blood glucose readings every day, maybe 3 times a day, where it can be automated from a persistence perspective. So in other words, you can create a pathway that says, did you take your blood pressure message? Yes, or excuse me, did you take your blood glucose reading today? Yes or no? So again, there's a lot of ways to build pathways, and also you can actually add automated responses to the pathways as well. Again, to keep it going. As an example, we have a client that sends out orders, and if a patient doesn't reorder, they actually send a survey and they ask the patient, is it for one of these 3 reasons? And that's all done automatically. So there's a level of auto chat or auto bots that occur as well. So that help, Ashley?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
And Teresa had a comment as well. You're talking about communication level with the HIEs. Is that right, Teresa?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I just got off the MyHIN, which is the Michigan Health Information Network. The MyHIN Care Connect call this morning. I can share that link with people, but they're actually using digital communications as part of their strategy and building that right into the HIE. So in this case, as you may know, MyHIN is connected to Velaterra HIE, which is the Midwest Health Connection, so MHC out of Missouri. So looking at this, obviously for kind of Lacey and Tiger, as well as, on the Kansas side, Kahan, but Definitely HIEs are looking at integrating this such that it can be linked in directly to the basically dashboard or platform or viewer or whatever you want to call it that they're putting out there for their users, for their participants. So it's happening. I mean, this is definitely the wave of the future. And if you're, it's to augment what you have internally, not to supplant it.
Thanks, Teresa. I would agree. And I think, back to Dr. Brian's points, certainly there's a lot of applications out there that can text, but again, we're not looking to unseat that. We're looking to augment the current and existing applications, such to in essence elevate the level of communication and interaction and engagement with the patient. So whether it be by texting or whether it's some other product that facilitates the success of the organization, that's what we're looking to do.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you very much, Bob. That's a very comprehensive view of things and very, as I said, I think very strategic. So I really appreciate the view. Any other thoughts before I sign off here? All right, well, thank you all. I look forward to communicating in and amongst ourselves and joining again together next month. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.